Hello, it's not, I don't know. It might be morning where you are. Good morning. I was going to say good morning because that's how I start.
It is morning right now for us.
Morning for us?
Yeah.
I just don't know. Like, they may be watching it in the afternoon. This could be like,
Who is they?
I don't know. Who is they? Who is they? And are they watching it? I don't know. Like, welcome to Corner Conversations. And we are talking about Genesis this week.
That was a lot.
Yeah, it was, but it's always a lot.
If Scott's listening from where he is, it might be later
Yeah.
or earlier, depending.
Yeah. Scott is in Germany, and that's why we have Tori here. Hi, Tori.
So we got a text on her watch. Please
Tell us.
that is some account executive that didn't show up.
Tell us something about Tori.
Hey.
This has been the worst week.
Interesting.
Man, these orange names. Wow, what is happening? A violin trip.
Well,
Okay, anyway,
that's Tori.
Tori here. It's the orange too. I love it. Dessert, and in fact, it's and deep under it. She's got like that filter shy to let her her face. As strange as the 80s as they come. This is sort of well is sure. I won't put the into it in the 80s because that feels like a shirt my mom wore in the 80s. Maybe. Until no and long. Which is, I mean, that's so it's cool again. I'm cool. Yeah, I'm fun, but I'm pretty cool. I'll show pretty cool. Sometimes I get Tori hugs in there. I try to give her mom hugs once in a while, but
I don't even know what that means.
I don't have a mother, okay? So when Rachel leaves,
Can I give Tori mom hugs?
no, it's me could try.
This is quite the start.
Well, I don't know how.
What?
I don't know how to get to Genesis. I mean,
You just did it. Now we're in Genesis.
it's water time.
You said Genesis. Yeah. Tori's speaking in the North Loop. That's why she's here today. You're always invited to come to the podcast.
Yeah, I'm guest starring.
Guest star.
No, it's
Just keep the cramps to yourself.
That's stupid with Danny. Like, it's like you think I look 80s shirt, and then we could have like that intro of like 80s shows. So it's gonna be like what's our Victoria come to this. The perfect, and then you have like the freaks playing right here. Like for him. Oh man, I like having you here. This is fun.
So that
They don't notice work.
they found parts of the submarine.
I know it floated the whole lot.
Yeah.
Mike and I were talking about it so I was up late reading about this because I was just like,
Well, you didn't by Thursday. You didn't know it was happening.
what was happening. I was in the honest area. I know that there was this stuff. Why did you that's what I did? Yeah, and now they logged this connection. Although they were lost at sea, and it was the submarine floated. But it's setting and floated almost immediately.
Catastrophic.
Yeah.
So in under 30 milliseconds,
Yeah.
from this to
Yeah,
has done.
and they were gone.
Right.
That and wings. Good. But Mike and I were talking about it because we were like, do they know what causes that? It was like pressure change from the inside to the outside, or
Here's what happened.
okay, Frake's got it.
Most submarines that can go really far down are built fully of titanium. This guy that built this one,
DIY.
he built it out of part titanium and part carbon fiber, and then refused to actually get it certified through. There's like a certification thing. He's like, no, it's good. It's fine. And then he sold seats for like $250,000 a piece or something like that to 4 people, and they joined him, and then they died.
Yeah. But he's been doing this since
So
20.
if you're gonna go on a sub, make sure it's certified. I think that's the lesson.
He literally said we tried to keep it more affordable, so we used a lot of off-the-shelf parts.
Yeah.
Never use off-the-shelf parts when you're going 2.5 miles into the ocean.
Oh.
Straight though. Yeah.
But I know we're talking about how much this is horrible, but like the idea of being lost and like without contact under sea for 4 to 5 days, knowing death is coming versus like a 30 millisecond
Yes. Oh, yeah. It was probably, hey, here we are, and then they weren't.
And then they worked. They didn't even know. The twist.
Yeah.
They hated the thing down.
Yeah.
Another interesting bit of news that is slightly more happy. There was a concert at Red Rocks yesterday or 2 days ago.
Where 90 people were hurt, injured.
Like 85 people were injured and 7 were sent to the hospital because of hail.
Yeah.
Hey,
Yeah.
This pop-up storm, just
But no one died.
no one died.
that's good.
Yeah.
Oh,
So there's
it's so massive that caused.
Just a lot of it. It wasn't like giant. It was like this, but it's still like,
the videos are actually horrifying.
yeah, it's.
That was sort of more uplifting.
I mean, no one died.
Yeah.
Nobody died,
Nobody.
but
That.
potentially what
No
caused
one dies. That's a big story. Yeah. This.
Oh yeah, it did cause one.
because there's 5 people versus I don't know.
And those people didn't feel pain.
They probably did not know.
No, they were gone.
They just crushed. It was essentially crushed.
But you know where hail comes from? Rain.
Oh my God.
When rain freezes, and actually in the Bible they can't rain.
That was so weird.
Yeah. Well, I was gonna try to go the route of like
Boat.
natural disasters. Like
Oh man.
the boat thing was a stupid human mistake.
You know,
Whereas sometimes there's hail things.
Yeah.
And then wildfires.
And you know, another big boat that sailed, but with better consequences.
It's always a battle to see who can transition us from the chaos
We
to.
didn't know about the competition. It So like,
It should be a competition.
nobody in me. I think it should be, and we should tell Scott.
And it should be everybody else's job to try to derail when somebody does it.
I think if someone is honestly, I would win that topic or tour. And when anybody ever tries to do the transition, everyone else basically makes fun of the whole thing. I don't.
Yeah. That's one of our shticks.
I tried to do it a few times. I'm sorry. You went all any of this before we started.
You know? Not like that. That's also part of our shtick is people under the bus. No idea what's going to happen. Yeah.
Welcome. You have no idea what's going to happen. I still don't know. Here.
So we usually think that wildfires, droughts, floods are bad things. Like that would be something we would put in a bad category, right? Most of the time. Yeah. But for like the function of the world, they're actually things that are probably good, right?
Yeah, they're good too. I mean, like, it was interesting just reading it. It's like they're good and then they're hard. Like, it's just like the wildfires that are happening in Canada, they need to happen, they're important, but then they get to a point where it's so hot that it's hard to recover, like it kills the soil. So there's just like, there's so many weird, I don't know, it's just weird. The whole, sorry, Rich, fix it. I derailed him. Back to you, Greg.
Back to me. Well, we're going to talk a lot about kind of introing the conversation. We're going to focus a lot on the impacts of natural disasters and then also like potential benefits of them. So like growing up in California, fires were a thing that were fairly normal. It was like every summer somewhere burned pretty bad. And I just remember being in probably junior high, like science class or something, where they were talking about like fire is scary, but also a lot of these forests, it's designed to put the nutrients back in the soil so things can thrive and stuff like that.
It was really interesting because, like, you've talked about that a few times, and I think when I was studying what was really interesting with even like, because like it's wildfires and floods and even like droughts to a degree. Droughts not as much, but like floods, like they bring the same kind of concept. Like they bring all these nutrients back to soil or back to areas and create habitats that weren't there before. And like I would never go, oh, a flood is needed or good, but then like
But it kind of is, yeah.
it's for the ecosystem.
Yeah, and
Creates balance.
And I think we talked a lot about how, so we're talking about Noah's story, Noah and Ark. And then I'm fascinated how this is a story that is, as a child in Bible, going to church as a kid, you hear the story 1,000 times, right? Like, it's a battleground.
Rainbow and
Sing songs about it. But then you grow up and you never hear about it again because you start to dive into the story. You're like, oh, this is complicated and weird and
confusing.
lots of death and makes me uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And like the easy way out of that feeling a lot of times is to talk about this story as like God giving humanity a fresh start.
Yeah.
And we had a lot of mixed feelings about that. And
I think sometimes it's also like God knew this natural disaster was coming, so he told Noah to build an ark so he can save all the animals. And they don't focus on like God's gonna make the natural disaster.
Yeah, that's the
Yeah.
these other people are.
God very intentionally killed a lot of people here.
It's so. Well, and I think like it's really hard. Okay. I think like something that I was so at the beginning of the story, I feel like this is something that gets skipped a lot. Is like there is this really weird section where it's like these angels come to marry the humans and have all these children, and it's just full of wickedness. And like, what are these evil angels? And like, there's all these different understandings. And one is like, I mean, actual evil angels, and then some people are like, maybe they're kings who thought they had divine descent. Anyways, it's weird. It's really strange. But all this wickedness comes from it. And then God says, you know, he'll give them 120 years, and then we're just starting over. And it was like, when you look at that, like, because I keep looking at the old stories, like Adam and Eve, when Adam and Eve ate the apples, and God gave them a second chance, and Cain and Abel, when Cain killed Abel, he didn't destroy Cain. Life was different. There were consequences, but like they had chances. And I feel like in this story, there was 120 years for them to turn this around, and it did happen. And so there were horrific consequences that are really, I don't know, it's still pretty tough for me to understand.
Yeah. I think in our preparation, Tori, you did a good job talking about fresh start, both of like even why it's talked about as a fresh start often, but also how it's not really a fresh start. Would you like to share any of those topics?
It's so good.
It definitely helped me wrap my head around how we can even write a message about this story.
Yeah. I don't remember what it is. You were just talking about you just like escaping. Like I was talking about this a little this morning, like escaping and in like conflict, or what was it you used, or like uprooting, self-ordering. Yeah, the one thing that I said is something that I've read recently about self-sabotage, and it talks about it's a concept of uprooting, and the idea is that you're constantly looking for a fresh start, but really it's the avoidance of contemplation. It's instead of staying in tough times and figuring out how to work it out, it's always need a fresh start, always need a fresh start. But it's not actually like doing the hard work.
And so people will purposefully fail so that they get to have a fresh start? Is that what is happening?
Yeah, it's kind of, not necessarily purposely fail, but as soon as there is conflict, it's the idea of, instead of saying, okay, let's work through this and figure it out, I mean, it is, the self-sabotage is cut off, start new. Like, this is not to the soul side.
And I mean, that conflict is failure.
Yes.
Interesting.
That's it. I think, like, because like, when I was reading it, I was thinking a lot about, like, I like to bolt, I like to run, I like to get out of tough situations. Like, yeah. One of the things I wrote down was, like, when conflict is too much, go get a cup of coffee, because I've done that many times where I'm like, I'm getting up, I gotta go get a cup of coffee. This is intense. And it's like a small thing, like it's not like life-changing, but like it can be something that I feel can happen often. Instead of sitting in conflict, how do I get out of this quickly? We were just talking about being at the Enneagram, which Greg is not about, but all three of us know a little bit about the Enneagram. And you're an 8-wing 7, but we're both 7s. And one of the 7 traits is to run when things, or distract, or do all these things to kind of, like, when things are too tough, distract and do something else so you don't have to sit in the painful emotions. And I feel like not sitting in the painful, it really can stunt personal growth if you're not gonna sit in the tough stuff.
Yeah, I think I have a weird fascination with people that are able to stay committed to something that is insanely difficult. Like I think it's one of the most beautiful things. I know a lot of church planters who probably have stayed at their church longer than they should have, and it's beautiful still. Of like this, I'm gonna be committed to this neighborhood no matter what happens, or even like relationships or marriages where things can get tough, like the way that my mom is a great picture of that in a lot of ways of like, I mean, my dad's a great guy, but he wasn't always a great guy. Like he is, well, I mean, when they met, there was a lot of chaos in his life. And, I mean, he was a high school dropout and they had no money and like things were externally hard. My dad wasn't doing things to make life hard, but there was just the consequences of his previous choices. And my mom just like, or even when my dad had a stroke, like watching my mom just be so committed in the midst of that insanely difficult season. It's just like such a beautiful thing to see. And I know like there are definitely situations where people shouldn't stay committed.
Yeah.
And that's complicated.
It's a really long conversation. Well, I mean, we were on, no, speaking of boxing, we had long conversations about that.
Yeah, for sure. There are definitely things that people can do to forfeit the right for others to stay committed to them. I don't know the best way to word that. But there's like, I think part of this Noah story and really the Old Testament in general, part of the reason I love the Old Testament so much is this like just this beautiful picture of God's commitment to humanity. And even though like God kills a bunch of people in the story, which is like hard to reconcile with, there is this commitment to trying to figure out how to make this work.
And do this again.
And I like to use the word like God's desperation or God being desperate because it shows how like imperfect his approach to it is, because he doesn't just force it to happen.
Right.
Like after the flood story, things get complicated really quickly.
Right. And he knows that. He says it right away. He's like, actually, like, I love that part where like Noah gets off the ark and he immediately makes an altar and makes a sacrifice, and it's like a soothing smell to God. I love the word soothing because it's like, it's not like just sweet, it's not like it's this beautiful, but it's like soothing to God. And it's like, oh, like God wants them there. Like it's not like he just wanted to do this and be done. Like he wants this relationship, he wants them there. And then he goes, okay, I'm never going to do this again. Like people are going to be wicked. People, like he says, this is going to happen again. Like this isn't going away, and I'm never going to respond in this way again.
And something I just thought about while you're talking is like God, like, again, hard to wrap your head around God killing all these people. But I think there's something to like being committed to someone or people or a place, but also having like standards or like things that you expect in return. Like if you're going to be committed to somebody and then they're going to treat you poorly, then of course that's going to cause some sort of division or stuff. And I think that's what's like happening here, right? Before the flood is God's fully committed to humanity, but humanity is not committed to God at all.
No.
And it has to be a two-way street. A little bit. There's Noah, the remnant, right?
It's just one. Yeah.
And I think that's like same in a relationship, like in a marriage. Like the only way a marriage works is if it's mutual commitment. Like you can't, no matter how much you want it, if the other person doesn't want it, then it can't happen, right?
Well, something like what I've been thinking, like when you were talking about commitment between like your mom and dad and just in marriage and in relationships, like when I think about this bolting piece, I think about it internally. Like what's going on in me? What am I running from to avoid this pain? What am I running from? You know, and like this self-sabotage piece and like commitment and things like that. And like there is a commitment to ourselves even to grow, like, and not just sit, like not just avoid. You can't have a fresh start all the time and expect the serenity prayer, or it's one of the steps. It's like you can't do the same thing over and over again and expect. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. And what'd you say?
That was a journey.
I know, but yeah, some people do it. Some were somewhere, some are something. Oh, never mind. Anyways, but like that fresh start where you're trying to escape and run and just like there's this old movie called Mermaids. The movie, it's like got Cher in it. It's so old. It's very 80s. But like one of the parts of the stories is how a mom just keeps uprooting this family and moves to, like, when things get hard, she just uproots everybody and moves from place. Why no the riders in it? Anyway, she uproots and moves from place to place to place. And like the kids start to get frustrated because it's like they can't have relationships. They can't have roots anywhere. They can't settle down because as soon as it gets hard, they just move. And it's like doing the same thing over and over again and expecting things to be different. And like for us internally, that commitment to go, okay, I'm going to like, instead of escaping, instead of running, instead of me getting out to go get a cup of coffee or whatever, like, how am I going to sit in this uncomfortable conflict and actually work from the beginning all the way to the end, like getting through the tunnel? And I don't know. I mean, that was quite a journey, but like there is commitment to us, our own growth too. That's what I was curious. There's a lot of words to get there, but she led me right. See you.
Tori, can you summarize what Rachel just said?
Yes. So she said it so elegantly that I want to hire beaks. My.
Yeah. So we're going to share the story, and then we're going to talk a little bit about, there's a couple questions in here that go together, like why do you think generations will pass down the flood story? Mm-hmm. And then what do the extremes of the story teach us about the character of God? To me, those are probably like the hinge of most Old Testament weird stories that you read. Like,
why is this important?
Yeah, we have to go through that, like try to gain that lens of those people. And these are people that did not have science, did not have modern understanding of how anything worked. So they were desperately trying to make sense of how the world worked around them.
Yeah.
And so, yes, this is what do these stories tell us about who God is? And I think that question can be dangerous because it can be, well, God just wants to kill people, or God has standards that people can't live up to, or all these things. But when you think about it through the lens of like a healthy relationship, those mutual commitment, if people aren't going to have, if someone's not going to have a relationship with you, why would you have a relationship with them? If the Creator created humanity to have a relationship with us, and then large section of it says, nah, we're not into it, like why would he?
Yeah. I think too, like something that you talked about when like early on when we were talking about this story, and just like the metaphors of these stories in Genesis and what do the metaphors show us. And it's like, if you break this down really quickly, it's like there was evil and wickedness in this world for 120 years, and they chose not to change. And then a flood came, forcing change. And then coming out of that flood, there's this newness, this new remnant. And it's like, it's not a fresh start, but it is new. I don't know, it might be a little bit fresh start, but it's new. And like, what does that do for me in my own life? Like, when are there moments, like, because I think personally there's times in my, like, I could think especially like in my mid-20s where like life was kind of falling apart for me and things were really hard. And then it felt like, it's not a flood, but it felt like everything was, I was dying to myself, and it was like looking for something new and becoming new and working through all these tough things. And then where was I going to go on the other side of that? Like, if this flood is this, because that might be that one where we're going to dig in and have some growth and change. And then what comes out of the other side? Am I going to be new? Am I going to live my life following after God? Is it going to be new? Or am I going to stay either in the flood or in who I was before the flood and just go a whole different direction? And just that crossroads, or that fork in the road, which direction am I going? And I don't know. We didn't really talk as much about that this Sunday, but that was something that when I was studying the story of Noah, just like, oh yeah, like this feels like a moment that a lot of people go through where life has changed and you have this fork in the road and you have to decide, where am I going? What am I doing? Who am I? Who am I going to be?
Yeah, a lot of that conversation, and we did talk about it more on, I don't know, 2 Thursdays ago. Mm-hmm. So next week we're doing what we call flip-flop messages, where we each do our own message, and then we use that message a couple of times as we go throughout the communities and be able to do it at each location. a lot of that is why I started writing my message, which is kind of about the crossroads of suffering and peace.
Yeah.
And how suffering is something that is guaranteed in life, and peace is something that has to be chosen, even in the midst of that. And I think a lot of that comes out of, some of your conversation about that self perspective of flood of like, we will all have moments of life where things are hard and painful. And I think sometimes we have a tendency to want to compare with others, but the reality is that even when things are at their most chaotic, peace is something that is available for us to choose and to have. And I think it's something that God wants to give us. And it's not a feeling. It's not I think a lot of times when people talk about the peace of God, we go, but I don't feel it.
Yeah.
And that comes out of lack of perspective, I think. And we see Noah day after day send out the ravens first, right? Ravens. Yeah. But like, for me, that's like that was his process of like, of having peace, as he's like, I'm going to just keep trying. And one day I have faith that we will get through this.
It's like
dry land. Yeah. Dry land will come.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's a long time to hope for and to keep hope and not let go. It's intense.
Yeah. And we're going to end with just briefly going over how do you say it? Noahic?
Yeah.
Noahic Covenant?
Noahic.
That word?
I was like, Noahic? Noahic.
I think it's Noahic.
But it did Noah.
Yeah. And it's, I think, I didn't do any research on this, but I think it's the only covenant in the Bible that doesn't have requirements for the other side.
Yeah.
So it's like God making a promise to humanity without saying, if you do these things, which is fascinating, which is not usually how a covenant works.
Well, and even like in that, like when I was reading that part of scripture where it says with the rainbow and then with the covenant, like it talks about him reminding himself even that I'm not going to do this again. Like it wasn't just a reminder for us that he will never do it again, but it says reminding myself that I will never do this again. And it's like, because as a parent, I feel like there's moments where I'm like, these kids keep doing the same stupid thing over and over again, but there's like this reminder, I'm not gonna wake them up.
Reminders are helpful.
Yeah. What were you saying, Rich? You have things.
No, as we're talking about it today, I think I have arrived at something that is going, like, it's one of those things as you're building your faith throughout your entire life, then all of a sudden there's another building block that I had not thought about before. And we have not talked about, I don't think. But just think about it. So Genesis 1 and 2, God creates the stuff. He said it's good. He creates humanity. He said it's very good. And then all of a sudden, humanity, like dum-dums, does all this stuff, and evil comes. And God looks and goes, oh, there's evil here. There's no good. I'm going to give 120 years. Maybe they'll turn it around. But then I'm just going to wipe them and it's going to be done. And then the next word is but. It's but Noah found favor. But when if we turn it around and we look at it from the character of God that we see throughout Scripture, there's a lot of, like, the Old Testament's got a lot of wars and stuff. But, like, just character of God in the whole of Scripture, I think God probably looked at his creation that was very good and saw all the crap they were doing and went, that hurts.
Yeah.
And is just like, but I want them to be like better. And then goes, but I have to wipe them out. But Noah. And the giant killing of everyone that happened, I don't think God loved. That's what I'm getting to, is I don't think he was just like, okay, and like end of humanity. Like, I think that he looked and he went, I want to have a relationship with this wonderful, very good group that I created.
Yeah.
How can I have that? Right now they're wicked.
They don't want a relationship with
me.
Yeah.
And then Noah. And God went, I can have a relationship with humanity. I'm committed to that, but we gotta move forward. And that's something that we always, people go, how do you reconcile God killing all these people? Well, in commitment to relationship with humanity and in commitment with humanity's relationship with God, there's got to be some of this stuff, even though God probably didn't like it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's just fascinating.
Well, it's like, yeah, it's like,
Because then God says, I'm not going to do this again. I'm not going to bring a flood again. I know y'all are going to be dum-dums again. And I'm not going to flood the earth. Like, things are going to get bad. But I'm not going to do this.
Yeah.
I think it's fascinating. It's going to dominate the rest of my 24 hours of the day. But
and that was Rich's recap.
Was that your recap? Would you have a recap?
I think the end is God is committed to relationship with humanity, and we need to be committed to relationship with him because that's how commitment works.
That's how relationship works.
That's how relationship works, yeah. Relationship, yeah. And God's commitment to relationship with humanity and our commitment to relationship with each other or with God sometimes requires sacrifice. And unfortunately, at this point, it was all of humanity except for Noah. But, I mean, you can't take all of God's character and just say, well, here's the New Testament God, this is who he is.
Right.
You have to take the whole Bible, but in taking all of God's character, we have to know that he is good, just, and loving, and he wants relationship. And we just gotta trust that he didn't enjoy killing all of humanity except for Noah.
You said that with me. So
But Noah.
But Noah. And that's how the next part starts.
Yeah.
But Noah.
Stupid but Noah.
When his kids walk in,
And-
they see but Noah.
No, that's Noah.
Oh, Noah's butt.
Noah's butt.
Yeah.
But Noah. Well, we made it.
I feel like this was like a busy podcast, but there's just so much
Yeah.
in this story.
It's complicated.
It is complicated.
But thanks for being here, Tori. Yeah. Thanks for speaking. If you want to hear Tori speak about Noah and the Ark, come to Corner Church North Loop on Sunday at 8:15 or 10. I think those are the times.
She does both, yeah.
Yeah. I didn't remember the actual service times. I was guessing.
Did it?
And did it.
Good job.
It came to the brain. So anyways, be involved with your local church. We'll see you guys next week.
See you.